is most important above all else at the moment for these institutions that need to do everything they can to get their credibility back and make people not think that they're just activist organizations that the courts seem to be. And that was made perfectly clear with the examples of this. So there's been a guy that has been jailed for 3 years in the UK for the distribution of quote-unquote extreme right-wing music. No joke. No joke, right? A father of two has been jailed in the UK for the distribution of what the courts have deemed are extreme right-wing music from his home in Hereford in England. Chicken factory worker Norbert, I'm not sure how to pronounce his surname because he's a Hungarian national, Gyurcsik, however you say it. He's a Hungarian national who's lived in the UK for more than 2 decades. He was sentenced to 40 months jail at Worcester Crown Court on Thursday by Judge Jonathan Lockhart, who described him as a quote-unquote ardent racist who ran a quote-unquote hub of hate. Gyurcsik, who's 48 years old, was arrested in May last year after officers from the West Midlands, in fact, I'll just quickly sort this and bring this up on screen for you as well, the West Midlands Counter-Terrorism Unit raided... There we go. They raided his home and found 2,000 records he was buying and selling across the UK and Europe. And as far as I know, they haven't made any mention as to what this is, right? He then pleaded guilty in October for 2 counts of distributing, showing, or playing a recording containing content which was quote-unquote, which was threatening, abusive, or insulting with the intent to stir up racial hatred, and 1 count of possessing racially inflammatory material, according to the Ledbury Reporter. He apparently made £200,000 selling the music between September 2020 and May 19th, 2024. Judge Lockhart ordered a financial investigation saying this man was making a vast sum of money from this material. It's music. It's music. What was it? The Nazi theme? What was it? What was it? What was he selling those to the tune of £200,000 across 4 years? They don't tell us. They haven't told us anyway, at least not yet. But again, everything is branded as extreme right wing. Probably half of your gym playlist, probably you listening right now, unless it's just like the stereotypical dancey chart stuff, you've probably got stuff in there which could fall into this category. Right? Anything which has, Christian theme, nowadays would be lambasted as far right. So if you have Creed in any of your playlists, what's to say that they couldn't be labeled as far right or anything like that? I made a video or put a video up on X about me on the hack squat in the gym the other day, and about saying my nose was by ammonia because I had the smelling salts, and then I had the screamy German guy in my ear counting to 8 in a really gruff, deep voice. Right? If you know the band Rammstein, you know the song that I'm on about. One of the best gym songs that there ever is, in my opinion. Even though I can't understand half the words, although I looked them up on Google Translate, obviously. But point being is that could probably be lambasted as far right, just for the the sick guitar riff and the big beating drums in the background, and just the fact that the singer's German. Right? They're not making the thing what this is, but it's planned that you tended to stir up racial hatred. Again, who's to be the judge of that? So again, Sam Melia, who I spoke about with Joe Marsh, I just realized you probably didn't even see my face for half of that because it was probably obscured by the article. But Joe Marsh spoke about Sam Melia, and he was distributing stickers at the time, not even necessarily distributing them, but making them, right? Because they weren't politically correct, and they were basically saying to the tune of White Lives Matter was how I got explained it. They said if you think that he was intending to stir up racial hatred when he was making them, that you can convict him just based on that, right? It was a conviction clear as day of a thought crime. Conviction clear as day of a thought crime. So who's to say this isn't the same? Who's to say this isn't the same? Offending of this nature has the most serious consequence on society as a whole. I think more so the, racially motivated child and the terror attacks and all of the things like that committed in the name of a foreign god are more pressing to society as a whole. I think the demographic replacement is more pressing to society as a whole, personally. I think the fact that all of our politicians have decided they're going to turn against us because they hate us is more pressing concern for society as a whole. But what do I know? What do I know? And this is the biggest thing. Here's the biggest thing. He said to Gyurcsik, and I want to bring this back up on screen so you can actually see this. This is what the judge allegedly actually said. in sentencing, compared him to a war criminal. Compared this guy to a war criminal, hiding behind a facade of legitimacy. Absolutely nuts. They're saying they're going to compare him to a war criminal for making money, distributing music, and still don't seem to have said what that music is. They said that the quote-unquote extreme right-wing music, and he was investigated on whether the lyrics on the albums breached terrorism legislation. But yet, the same government, the UK, seemingly want to bring literal suspected terrorists to the UK shores. Because this is what just broke in The Sun. And this is where you're seeing that judges now are little more than political activists, a lot of them. Asylum win, quote-unquote. Migrant suspected of bomb attack which killed 269 people wins appeal against UK decision to refuse him asylum. The migrant, known only as YA, argued that the judge at a previous hearing was biased, and he's suspected of being involved in terror attacks in Sri Lanka, which killed, as I said, nearly 270 people. Apparently arrived here in 2022, claiming he and his wife were persecuted back home. He was originally, I believe, denied asylum. Bear in mind, this terror attack also killed several British citizens, right, in Sri Lanka in April 2019. And now a judge has overruled it, despite even the Home Office refusing him an asylum hearing. He had been in his native country over the IS Easter bombings, which killed 269 people, including British citizens, in April 2019. The Home Office refused him asylum following a hearing, but successfully appealed at the Immigration Upper Tribunal in Birmingham. Deputy Upper Tribunal Judge Claire Burns, no surprise it seems to be a female, I think I already have a good idea of what the haircut's going to be, found a series of errors were made, including missing his release on bail following an arrest warrant. She denied that any previous judges were highly prejudiced, and now the case will be reheard at a later date. Judge Burns concluded, I find that there will need to be a complete rehearing wherein the judge will make findings about the credibility of YA's account. Given the nature and extent of the fact-finding, the appeal should therefore be remitted to the first-tier tribunal. So this is where we are. Now. Giving asylum to suspected terrorists that were involved, or allegedly involved, suspected of being involved. Sadly, it didn't give me an image of what the judge looked like, but I got a feeling we know what the haircut's going to be. Granting literal terrorists, or at least suspected terrorists, asylum. In many instances, we have many people. I can't remember who it was, but Douglas Murray a little while ago on one of his videos, or it might have been a video from a little while ago, said there was senior Islamic terror group officials living in Harrow, basically. I can't remember if it was Islamic Jihad or anything. I can't remember the exact group, but there was one of them living in Harrow. We harbour literal terrorists, but we send people to prison, and we call them asylum seekers, by the way. And we send people to prison for the distribution of music, which has been deemed to breach terrorism legislation. So a little bit of a breakdown of this. On Easter Sunday, 21st of April 2019, Sri Lanka suffered a series of coordinated bombings targeting Christian churches during Easter services and luxury hotels frequented by tourists. They were carried out by 9 Sri Lankan bombers linked to the local extremist group called the National Tawhid Jamaat, or NTJ, who had pledged allegiance to the Islamic State, and they officially claimed responsibility 2 days later. So they attacked churches during Easter Mass, St. Anthony's Shrine in Colombo, St. Sebastian's Church in Negombo, which was the deadliest single site with over 100 people killed in one go, Zion Church in Batticaloa, which is in eastern Sri Lanka. They also attacked the Shangri-La Hotel, Cinnamon Grand Hotel and Kingsbury Hotel. And later that afternoon, a second wave came. They had a small explosion at the Tropical Inn near the Colombo Zoo, or a guest house in Dehiwala, and an explosion at a housing complex in Dimatagoda during a police raid. It killed 3 police officers and several civilians, including children of the bombers. And then a further wave was actually thwarted by the security forces. So you had deaths, 269, including at least 45 children, and many other foreigners as well. 40 Indians, thereabouts, 11 British, 8 Chinese, 5 Americans, and others from Denmark, Japan, and Australia, and other places. You have over 500 people injured. At least 167 victims were Catholic worshippers, later recognized by the Vatican as heroes of the faith in 2025. As mentioned, all 9 bombers were Sri Lankan citizens associated with these groups. Ringleader was a man by the name of Mohammed Zaran Hashim, aka Zaran Qasim, a radical preacher who died in the Shangri-La hotel bombing. Other key bombers included Ilham Ibrahim and Inshaf Ibrahim, wealthy brothers who targeted the Shangri-La and Cinnamon Grand. It was an attack which didn't go without warning. So as early as April 4th, Indian intelligence had warned the Sri Lankan authorities, naming NTJ and Zaran Hashim's planning attacks on churches and the Indian High Commission. A warning was circulated on the 11th of April, but nothing was done due to political infighting. And then after the attack, it became a major political scandal, as you can imagine. So it was a massive, massive terror attack. And now it seems that judges are going even beyond the already massively politicised, hostile to the UK Home Office, and bringing suspects here under quote-unquote asylum seeking, systems, which should give you an insight as well. The asylum system is not, in fact, an asylum system. The asylum system is just another branch of the mass replacement immigration system. It's another branch of the immigration system. That's how they see it. That's how our political leaders see it. Just brand everybody an asylum seeker, and it gives an instant reason as to why these people are coming here. It's not going to be scrutinized. It tells you everything that you supposedly need to know about them, that they're fleeing persecution or whatever it is, even if it's not true. So then if you say, oh, hang on, what's going on here? Oh, you're against people claiming asylum? You're against people? You'd send these people back to these countries where they're being persecuted? Well, how do we know? How do we know? How do we know? We've seen that judges with this whole bent on restorative justice and all of these other things which are hostile, overtly hostile, and declaring war on a safe, prosperous, and functioning society, will, for example, repeatedly release violent criminals, even having a good knowledge of their criminal background. There's an example here. In this instance, if I bring this up, is from Thurston County. A person who just got into a shootout with police, I believe it was on his 3rd arrest, or the police at least were pursuing this guy and had pursued him twice prior in a 6-month period, right? And this police officer, which I'll show you in a moment, openly says, look, if these judges are not going to take this seriously, people are getting killed. And next thing you know, this guy is now in a shootout with police. So judges, often because of skin color, which then, if it's the wrong skin, or if the person has a specific skin color or specific religion or whatever it is, it means then that it's society's fault, not their fault. It's nothing to do with the race and racial vendettas, nothing to do with their religious ideology, which influences their political outlook, how they act in politics, but then also their overall worldview, how they see different people, and all of these things. All of these things often meld together, right? Nothing to do with any of that. It's society's fault for not being tolerant enough, or society's racist. Society is not doing what it should be to accommodate these people. Or if they just had another youth club, they would have been fine. No. And as a result, then it's just used as an excuse not to lock people up because people are being scared of being called racist. Funny thing is, less serious incident with this is because 2 people on I'm a Celeb, the 2 people that have recently seemed to have gone out, number 1 and 2, are well, they're not white. Basically, you had I think it's Alex Scott, the footballer, the ex-Lioness, and then you had Eddie. Right, those 2 have been voted out. Right, and now people are calling it racist, they're calling it this, they're calling it that. And it's all a manifestation of it. People are being so scared of being called racist, or anything bad happens to what's deemed a person of color or black person, or any other person that's deemed as marginalized or whatever. Anything bad that happens to them instantly means they're being discriminated against. And then it leads to things like this. It leads to people being put in danger directly.
It's got a felony warrant out of Thurston County Sheriff's Office because this is the third time we've pursued this individual in 6 months. So the last time I talked about him, I actually specifically stated that if the judges don't start taking this seriously, that someone's going to get hurt or killed. And here we are, shooting at the police. So maybe they'll take it more serious this time, but I'm not confident. Yeah, it's hard to believe this is going to end peacefully. It's got a felony warrant.
Highly doubtful. Highly doubtful, because a lot of these people, they internalize the propaganda being that all police are bastards. ACAB, right? All police are bastards. And I cover police malpractice and police negligence and all of these other things time and time again on this channel. I fully know that there's good ones out there. But I know there's good ones out there that don't want to give up the badge, right? Because they, still feel as maybe though there's something that could be salvaged about it, or some that have gone out, they've left the force and have spoken about their experiences and stuff like that, right? There are good people within the police. This guy seems, well enough. He's speaking well enough. I'm just saying that, look, this is the third time we've pursued this person in 6 months. So that means an average of every 2 months they've had to pursue this guy. Surely, again, the old saying is, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. And then fool me 3 times? These judges are activists. These judges are political activists, and that's plain to see. It's plain to see when they will, put, for example, as an example, Tommy Robinson for sharing the Silence documentary. They'll put him in solitary confinement in all of these things just for highlighting that documentary because he's in contempt of court for showing it. Now, my understanding of that is that nothing within that documentary was actually proved to be false. The old contempt of court thing was just they refused, they wouldn't let him put it out. They wouldn't let him put it out. And that the judge was basically calling all of the victims that testified at that time, the young girl who alleges she was hit across the back with a hockey stick by Jamal, all of the others that were there, right? All of the undercover, the covert recordings and stuff like that, people highlighting what was going on, none of that mattered, and the judge ruled against it anyway. That judge is a political activist. The evidence was clear. The evidence was clear. But they ruled in contempt of court because they didn't want him releasing it. They didn't want the public knowing. They didn't want the public knowing. You can say that, by the way, and you can still think that Tommy's a foreign shill and question his other allegiances, right? I think you can still say that. I think you can still say that. Because it's a critique of our court system more than anything else. But it's clearly showing that we have people that are quote-unquote judges that are just simply political activists, and they're working against the interests of the British, people. And I mean that as the collective group of tribes that make up the native Britons, right? And the English. If you enjoyed that clip, then make sure to go on over to the Voice of the Valleys X page at VOT_Valleys on X. We're also on Instagram at Voice of the Valleys. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon. Godspeed.